Hi. So today, right, I will be talking about the eye, which is the second part of chapter 10. Okay. However, I will not be talking about the whole component. I'll be just focusing on the second part, which you can see quite clearly in this learning outcomes. All right. I will not be talking about the overall structure of the eye. I will be talking about the application of the eye, right, to two things. So you can see in this bullet, right, the components of the eye, right, with relation to focusing distance on near and far. Okay. And then lastly, right, in this video, I will talk about how the eye um, respond to changes in light intensity. Okay, so I will not be talking about the first bullet. I will be talking about the second and the third. Okay, so let's begin. All right. So in order for you to understand the second point, right, you need to know three parts of the eye that is involved in this application. Okay, so you need to know that the lens is in play. The lens, right, is transparent, circular, and biconvex. All right, so you can see the word biconvex over here. It is not biconcave, so please be careful. The lens is elastic, and the lens is able to change its thickness and its curvature. Okay. Suspensory ligaments, right, are special connective tissue that attaches the lens to what we call the ciliary body, which is in the next part. All right. The ciliary body, right, contains ciliary muscles that controls the thickness and the curvature of the lens. So these three, right, are actually involved in what we call the accommodation part of the eye, which is how an eye adjusts to seeing a sharp image with relation to distance. Okay, so just remember these three, and these three will, how do I say, the other parts of the eye, right, is not that important when we talk about how the eye focus to distance. Okay, so just focus on these three, and I think it should be quite good. So yeah, over here you can see these three structures help the eye to produce a focus image, okay, with respect to distance. So we call this accommodation or focusing, all right? And the lens of the eye, right, adjusts in order to enable the person to see clear and sharp image. Okay, so I circle the word sharp because if your eyes are blurry and everything, you can still see the image, but they are not sharp. Okay, so actually the word sharp is quite important here. So when we focus, right, the thickness and the curvature, two things, not just the thickness, it is the thickness, which is let me annotate over here, right, the thickness of the lens, okay, which is the one that I'm drawing right now. And then the curvature, right, is the curvature, literally the curvature. So how curved it is, or more curved, or is it less curved? So these two things, right, will help the lens to adjust in order for us to look at things in a sharper vision. So let's use this analogy, let's use this scenario of a distance object, okay? And then the opposite scenario is, of course, it's a near object. So in this couple of slides, right, I'll be talking about the stuff that is happening for a distant object, and you have to remember all this. It's actually pretty easy to remember, okay? But yeah, of course, it takes a bit of effort. So when we are looking at a distant object, for example, you looking across the room at something that is pretty far away, all right? What is happening in the eye, right, is that the ciliary muscles relax, okay? The ciliary muscles relax, and this relaxation of the ciliary muscle is actually pulling on the suspensory ligament. Okay, so they become tighter, and you can see the word taut over here. So when the suspensory ligaments becomes tighter, right, they will pull on the lens. Okay, you need the picture of the eye in order for you to have a look. So when they pull on the lens, right, the lens will become, number one, I'm circling over here, thinner, which is the thickness, and less convex, which is the curvature. Okay, so you have to mention both thickness and curvature in your answer. Because of this change in the lens, right, the focal length increases. All right, and this increase in focal length, right, will adjust the convergence of the light ray, right, onto the fovea of the retina. Okay, so if all the light rays are focused on the fovea of the retina, right, the photoreceptors will be stimulated, of course, And then nervous impulse is initiated and transmit to the brain via optic nerve, which is a sensory neuron. All this is part of the first half of the chapter. And the brain will interpret the nerve impulse, and what you see, right, is a sharp and clear image, of course, okay? But sharp is more important to me. Okay? So this is what is happening when you're looking at something that is far. Now, when you're looking at something that is near, it's actually the same play, the same style of writing, but everything is some words becomes opposite. Okay, so number one, you can see over here, right, that the ciliary muscles contract, and this contraction of the ciliary muscles, right, relax the pull, so it's not so tight anymore. So you can see over here it becomes less taut in the suspensory ligament. Okay, and when the suspensory ligaments becomes less taut, the pull on the lens is lessened. So you see the word relaxing the pull on the lens. The lens, because they are not being pulled, it becomes thicker and it becomes more curved, okay, more convex. The focal length in this scenario will decrease, and the rest are all the same. Okay, it's focused onto the fovea, and because of all this focusing on the fovea, right, the photoreceptors will be stimulated, nervous impulse initiated, transmitted to the brain, and the person can still see a near object sharply. Okay, so two scenarios. All right, so these three parts of the eye, right, are involved in what we call accommodation or focusing. The other thing that the eye can adjust to, right, is light, and this is known as pupil reflex. Okay, so the pupil is able to change its diameter because the pupil can become bigger, which we call dilate, or the pupil can become smaller, which is constrict, correct, in response to changes in the light intensity. Okay, the reason why the pupil is able to change the diameter, right, is not because of anything, but it's because of the iris. In the iris, right, there is a set of antagonistic muscles, okay, circular and radial, not to be confused in the esophagus. All right, so same style but different names. So the circular and the radial muscles are antagonistic. If one contracts, the other one will relax. Antagonistic action, right, will control the size of the pupil. So let's go to one scenario again, okay? What happens when you are in bright light? You can see in this picture, right, that you can see the pupil over here in this eye is actually very constricted. It's actually very small. Okay, it's actually logic. Think about it, all right? So when your eye is exposed to bright light, the circular muscles will contract. Okay? I think it is always good to think from a circular muscles point of view. Personally, I like to think from a circular muscles point of view. If I know that the circular muscles contract, then I know that the radial muscles of the iris relax. Okay, because it's opposite. All right. This action, right, will decrease the diameter of the pupil. And of course, if the pupil becomes smaller, then less light will enter the eye. There will be less stimulation of the retina, and so on and so forth. Okay? In dim light, when you enter a dark room, it is the opposite. The circular muscles relax, the radial muscles actually contract. The pupil diameter in this case, take a look at the picture, you can see the pupil becomes bigger. Okay? So the pupil, right, will actually increase in diameter, and this increase in diameter will allow more light to enter the eye and stimulate the retina. Okay? And then the person can see better in the dark. Alright? So that's it. This is how the eye applies to two scenarios. One scenario is on near and far, which is actually to me is more complicated. And the other scenario, right, is applied to light to bright and dark situations. And these two are the most common application of the eye. And besides, so in this component, right, of chapter 10, you must learn how to label and to describe the functions of parts of the eye. And the second point is you must learn how to describe how the eye adjusts to near and far objects. And the third point, which is the last point, is you must learn how the eye adjusts to bright conditions and dark conditions. And then that's it for this chapter. Okay, that's it. All right, thank you very much. Bye bye.